My friend Annie had asked me to do sort of an intro to how to do stamping kind of video, and also to sort of do an intro to how the physics sidekick works. So I thought I would just do a quick video, and I'll try and keep this one a little more to the point than a lot of my videos because they tend to get a little rambly. But let's talk about the kind of stamps you're likely to see on the market. The most common one are these clear stamps that are either made out of silicone or photopolymer. Photopolymer tends to be slightly more expensive and is a little more rigid, so you tend to get a better impression. That's, I believe, what these guys are. You'll see both sentiments and images, and there are a couple of different ways to work with them. The other things you'll see are sort of traditional red rubber stamps that are directly mounted on a wood block. And you'll also see these. Let me see. I had one to the side and then I moved it. Oh, here we go. So this CC design stamp is like that, only it's not mounted. So you would work with this a very similar way to how you would work with these photopolymer ones. But since I know you have these, I will focus on that. Generally, the difference between the red rubber and the photopolymer is that the photopolymer is both see-through and slightly softer. So with the red rubber, you tend to get finer lines. Let me show you an example. So this card was done with a red rubber stamp, and you can see that there's all these like etched details in the mice or the mouse's fur. So that's generally what you'll see with more of a red rubber stamp is like if you want like the etched look, you'll get that. So as you probably realized, if you were to just try and pick these up, they're really sticky and they're kind of difficult. Like this would be really hard to try and stamp with and handle with ink and stuff. So you basically need to mount them on something. Um, this is just an acrylic block designed for stamping, but you could also do this on pretty much any hard non-porous surface. Like I could use the lid of the stamp. Well, let me just show you what that would look like. So like I could just use this lid because it is non-porous and it is smooth, and this will just stick here as well. So if you don't have a stamp block, you can basically use anything that's non-porous. But today, since I have one, I'm going to use it. One thing I would recommend if you're a beginner is if you're stamping using anything but a stamp positioner, you're pretty much going to want to stamp separately, which is what I'm going to do. This is just 80-pound card weight. I think this is I think I picked this up at Michael's. Anyway, so we're going to want to ink this. And I'll briefly say I use I use three black inks primarily, and they're all a little bit different. Let me see if I see the third one here. I do not. I don't think. Ah, here it is. So these are the three black inks that I tend to use. They're all slightly different formulations. The Midnight is a dye-based ink, which is going to not work well with watercolor. It generally will, depending on the dye-based ink, it may or may not lift if you use alcohol-based markers. But generally, I like dye-based inks because they dry the fastest because they actually sink directly into the paper. Pigments tend to sort of sit on the surface. This VersaFine is a pigment-based ink, and it's going to be okay with water. So this is really good if you want to do watercolor, which is my plan. So I will use this one. Also, this Memento ink is good for alcohol-based coloring, and it is a dye-based ink. You've probably seen me using it a lot, and you may have seen other crafters as well. Um, both the VersaFine and the Memento are very heavily used throughout the community. So basically, what I'm going to just do here is I'm going to take the lid off of this, and I'm just going to tap a little bit to get the ink on the bumpy side of the stamp. You basically want to put the ink on this side with the lines. The other side will cling to whatever you're mounting them on. So then all I do is line this up, stamp it down, and make sure I have good pressure. I generally just hold this for a minute, stamp it up. We have a great image. Um, the benefit to these is that you can actually sort of see where the image would line up. So if you want to try and come back in and stamp it again, I'm kind of not successful with that, but folks who are better at using these kind of mounts are. I will say stamping by hand tends to take a little bit more practice to get your technique down. So a lot of beginner stampers, including me when I was new a couple years ago, tended to use some sort of stamp positioning tool because it essentially will keep the paper and stamp in the same alignment. So if you want to stamp again, you can do that. So let's see what that would look like. Same piece of paper. This is my Misty. You've probably seen it in every video. This is made by My Sweet Petunia, although there are other people who make different kinds of stamp positioners. Basically, all of them have some sort of door-like mechanism generally, or something that you can sort of line up your stamp and your paper and have it not move around. This one also has this black foam mat, basically that prevents you from smushing the stamp if you apply too much pressure. And it also has these magnets, and the base of this thing is magnetic, so this will basically hold our stamp where we want it. So I'm going to, all you do to get this off is you just peel at the corner and then they come off. So I'm just going to set this back down and then we will stamp a second time. I may have mentioned this earlier in the video, but one thing I found that was really helpful as a beginning stamper is if you can stamp your images separately and then cut them out, that'll give you a lot more leeway to potentially do it again if you didn't get something that you liked. And then you destroy fewer cards. I'm pretty good at stamping, especially word dies upside or word um, stamps upside down. Sentiment stamps, that's the word I'm looking for. So here the base looks good, but I might want a little more stamping on this top sort of frosting part. So I'm just going to hit it with a little more ink, and then we're just going to put the door down, and there we go. Um, so here you can see the two. These look almost identical. And yeah, don't do that. What can happen is these magnets are so attracted to each other, like they can't actually break. Um, so don't do what I just did. Do what I told you to do. Anyway, so this is the one in the Misty. This is the one I did by hand. They look very similar. Um, but that's sort of the basics to this. All you really need is something flat that you can mount the stamp to, and a black ink that's compatible with whatever medium you decide that you want to use. I would probably, well, I don't know. It depends what you like. If you're more of a colored pencil person, it doesn't really matter too much. If you're more of a, I forget where I put the stamp. Anyway, if you're using anything that more of a wet method, or alcohol ink, that's when you kind of have to be careful. Everything else is more straightforward. And I think that's all I really have to say about stamping. If there's specific things you want a little more detail on, let me know. I'm going to switch topics slightly and talk a little bit about the Sidekick. That is this piece of gear. Pretty much, and it's a manual die cutting machine. Pretty much all die cutting machines work under the same principle as like a pasta roller, where when you turn the handle, there are rollers in here that are, oh, you can kind of see them, that will, the one attached to the handle will turn and it will basically apply pressure to whatever you're feeding through it. This one also has the ability to suction down to the workspace. And the thing that's great about the Sidekick is it's really small. So if you're working on small things, like say I wanted to die cut some trees, um, this is perfect for that. Now, there's going to be a bunch of stuff in the box, but the things you're really going to care about are the plates. They're, I believe, depending on the bundle that you buy, sometimes you'll get little dies, sometimes you'll get other things. And sometimes they actually make mini embossing folders for this, although I don't think I own any. Um, that's sort of the one downside to this machine. Standard embossing folders are just too wide because basically this is about 2 inches wide total. So, what I think I will do is, let's say, and you can use pretty much any kind of paper you want in these, but since I have it here, I see that I have some green glitter paper. Whoops, that's what we just played with. So I'm just going to cut a small piece off. That's, I'm just going to eyeball it, but basically you don't want the paper to be wider than these plates. So believe these are a little more than 2 inches. Yeah, these are like 2.5 inches. So I just eyeballed this piece. And what I'm going to do is make a sandwich. I'm going to start with one of these plates. And I'm going to use the side that's already cut into. And then I'm going to put my die down. And then I'm going to take my other die and I'm going to put it on top. And I'm going to try and get the dies in the middle of the here. Um, because it's a lot easier to feed in if you don't have too much pressure. And these plates will actually wear out. So they're kind of a disposable piece of gear with this. If you bought this black machine, it actually came with black plates originally, but I use the teal ones now because they're the only ones that you can get as replacements. So here are my trees, and it's bears mentioning that because the die cut down on these, this is sort of considered the nice side, where you have sort of the um, like the edges that look more clean. If you flip it over, you have sort of, as you can kind of see on here, this edge sort of is rolled over a little bit. So this is sort of the less nice side. Some people talk about the nice side and the less nice side of a die cut. Also, as you see, the trees cut into here, that is intended. That's not like a flaw. And if as you use these more, these are pretty new plates, but the more you use these, the more beat up they'll get. So I think that's pretty much all you need to know about how to use the Sizzix for the Sidekick for die cutting. Um, and then these you can just use like elements on your card, sort of like how you used the diamond drills. So I think that covers the basics of the stuff you're curious about. But if you have questions, throw them in the description box. I'm more than happy to do another video. But until next time, happy card making and hope you have a lovely rest of your day.